to know better who Bwana Awich is.
Thank you so much. You have already made them know me a bit, but I can say it maybe in another word.
Yeah.
My name is Major Retired Awich. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I'm a practicing lawyer, advocate. Meaning that you have a law firm, I have a law firm. But my current preoccupation and deployment is that I'm the Director for External Affairs of the ruling party. That also makes me rightfully here, because I have the mandate to ensure, among others, Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism is one of the core principles of NRM. But also my other mandate is to ensure that NRM is in close contact with other progressive parties around Africa and around the world. And ANC is one of them. I was in South Africa in February with the Secretary General for an ANC activity. It was an ANC organized activity, but it was about support for Cuban people. We went there with Secretary General Right Honorable Todwong. I'm also a particularly senior person in NRA. Before it became UPDF, I grew up there. I was in Kadogo School in Mbarara, and because of that I was in Ntare School, and it's Ntare School which brought me to Makerere University for law.
Exactly.
So briefly, that is it. And
yeah, and I think a viewer knows who this man they are looking at, so that they can make a better understanding of the person. Now, Ndugu Awich, you realize that talking about South Africa, ANC is one of the longest serving parties on this continent. Immediately after Mandela, even before his release, ANC was very active, and there is a lot of connectivity between ANC and most of the revolutionary parties on the continent. And of course, I'm also aware that Uganda, for example, has been having a lot of collaboration with ANC and South Africa in general, including the support during the apartheid time, that Uganda did a lot of support alongside Mozambique and the other countries on the continent to support the people, the black people who were definitely under oppression in South Africa. When you look at the performance of ANC today, that over time it has dwindled up to having 40% only of the vote. It is because of the nature of the constitution, because I remember during the reign of Moi in Kenya, for example, when he was still with KANU, Moi could get 30%, but the other parties could even vote more. But of course the Kenyan constitution was that the simple majority, whichever party wins a simple majority, will definitely win an election. So if it were such arrangement, ANC still would have gone on to form a government, but they needed about 45% to be able to form that government, which they fell short of. What do you think could have, other than the corruption allegations, what do you think could have also been the other problem, that the ANC could not raise the required number to form a government?
Well, you said so many things in your preamble to the question, which needs to be addressed. Your question is simple about the problems, but I also note that you made so many comments on the preambular things about ANC, which I need to address. Okay, of course, ending up with your answer to the question. But something is tickling my mind. This is a Pan-African program, and I want to say something that maybe viewers know, but it would also hurt. It wouldn't hurt if I said it.
Okay.
Pan-Africanism is a spirit of togetherness of people of African descent. But the point I want to bring is that it started outside Africa. That's so interesting.
Sure, yeah.
That Pan-African did not start
On
in
the
Africa.
continent, yes.
Pan-African started outside Africa and came back to Africa. It did this because the Africans who were outside felt a sense of injustice. And that sense of injustice brought them together. That sense of injustice arose their consciousness of feeling that we are not like the people we are dealing with, and therefore we need to unite. So Pan-Africanism, much as it is now held by the Africans, it is started outside Africa, in America, in London, and if you see the names, the personalities that were involved, they were all in
Outside
America.
of Africa, yes.
One time I was in New York, in America, and we had a party at Uganda House, which is a big house, very nice, strategic, near UN, 14-story. We are so proud about it because not many countries in the world have such structures in that prime area.
Sure.
So we had a party, and if you could play, there's a common popular Teso song, or there's a popular Luganda song, an Acholi song, everybody would dance and be happy. And I asked them, I said, if you were united home like here,
exactly.
would be better. So I discovered that the far away from home, the more connected you are. You can be sure if you played a Teso song in New York, by Nyankole, by Chiga, by Toro, Acholi, Karen, everybody would be happy and dancing. So it's the same spirit that Pan-African started, and it came back. So I just wanted to mention that. Now,
sure. About
ANC, I'm lucky to have interfaced with ANC for a long time. In our student days in Intare School, when we were Kadogos, President Museveni had decided that since my children, the Kadogos, are back in school, even ANC should be back to school. Because there was a situation in Southern Africa where the white regime were bombing every country that was hosting trainees, recruits of ANC.
Sure.
In Angola, in Zambia, they bombed the conference center, just like our Serena, they bombed it. So there was nowhere they could keep the freedom fighters in Southern Africa, whether Angola, Mozambique, Zambia, wherever. So President Museveni said, no, bring them here, we shall train them and harm them and keep with them. We can't leave our comrades. Remember, that was a time when Moi was in power, Mbutu was in power. It wasn't easy, including Dr. Banda of Malawi. They wouldn't support, and if you landed in that country, they would arrest you. So President Museveni, in this revolutionary spirit, said, no, we can't leave our African brothers, bring them here. In fact, South Africa threatened to bomb Uganda also. And in the words of President Museveni, in one of the cabinet meetings, there was a big division in cabinet rift. There was a cabinet rift. The late Semugurere and the late Dornegyon were against support of South Africans.
It was fearing the consequences.
Yes, it was only Ria Kategaya and Kirunda Kivijinja, the revolutionaries, the Pan-Africans, who said, let's support them. And we supported them. We took them to Kaweta now, which is a revolutionary place, an historical site. We trained them, armed them. So the young ones, the Kadogos of ANC, Museveni said, go to school. So we are with them in Intare School as well. And they're big people in ANC. So I have known ANC for quite a long time. And of course, you talked about the longevity of ANC. ANC is one of the oldest parties in Africa. But amazingly, NRM is nearly half the life. But NRM helped to liberate the older party. Because they were older but not in power. One of their earliest leaders, Lithuli, with this road, you know, there's a road in Bugolobi called Lithuli Avenue. Yes, yeah. Lithuli was one of the, I think the last leader before they went in exile. And he was knocked by a train. It was surprising how can a leader be knocked by a train. So the death remains mysterious up to now. But when they came in exile, they had a president, Oliver Tambo, who led it until he handed over to Mandela, and Mandela took it to independence. So ANC is one of the longest parties, but not in state power. Yeah, but in state power, NRM, arguably, with its metamorphosis from a mass movement to a political organization, if you put it together, NRM is longer in power. And that is why a younger brother help to liberate an older brother.
Yeah, that's true.
And for that, South Africans really appreciate. And I was talking to people about the evolution of the diplomatic relations in Uganda, and I told them that if you look at the number plates of embassies, CD01 is American, British. Because they were the colonial masters. Immediately after independence, they got 01. Then the American got 02. So a South African ambassador said, oh, ours is now in many digits. I just like to say that it was because it was deliberate. Uganda refused to have diplomatic relations with South Africa as long as our blacks were not free. Said we can only have diplomatic relations with you on condition that our blacks are free. And they did not. In fact, at one time, I hope our current generation know that in our Ugandan passport, it was inscribed that a Ugandan was supposed to fly to all countries except South Africa. So the deliberate having diplomatic relations with South Africa was deliberate. It was on conditions that we can't have you until you do that.
We are free.
So that is basically a few comments I can make about ANC. And of course, after we supported them, after they got liberated, we quickly made that diplomatic relations, and that is why their number plate is so far behind. And now we are happy about that. Therefore, we have had interface with ANC. As I told you, we have visited them. They also visited us here. Before we went to South Africa, their team had visited us. We took them to Kaweta to see where their comrades were buried. We took them to meet our national chairman, President Museveni. I took them to State House, and they went back. Now, we as a party and as Ugandans, I presume, we are really not so happy about the developments that go on, especially with our comrades in ANC. We really think that they should maintain the majority lead, because we believe that looking at their programs, looking at their aspirations, looking at their history, they offer the best solution. Though the South African people have the ultimate choice. But for us as comrades, we are happy dealing with them, knowing their history.
Sure.
Now, it is amazing that they lost the majority, because they run a parliamentary democracy. A parliamentary democracy means those with the biggest majority in parliament. A presidential democracy like Uganda, President Museveni, according to the constitution, is 50 plus 1. So, therefore, they needed to have that majority, which they failed, and they had to go into this alliance. I hope the alliance will work. But they have had challenges. Like any family, they have had challenges. We have been with them, we have shared with them. I know that people look at ANC like one party, but ANC by implication are two parties, because ANC has an inherent alliance with the Communist Party of South Africa. And the Communist Party of South Africa are people who are really groomed with very strong literature exposure. They are the part of the party which are exposed to dialectical materialism, historical materialism, political economy, and they have a closer alliance to the workers than even ANC.
Yes,
you know, COSATU is such a strong organization in South Africa. Therefore, with the many challenges which are internal, is that it has led to their having not having the majority, which is not pleasing to us. Because if ANC loses state power, for example, now, it would give credence to those, including racists, to say, look, we gave them, where we means the blacks, where we means, we gave them, I mean, them meaning the blacks, we gave them, you see, they have failed. And yet they have good aspirations, good programs. So it's not pleasing to see ANC lose that, majority. We hope that the time that they have now, they will reorganize enough and address the aspirations of the people, and therefore be able to reclaim their position.
The 15% that MK of President Zuma took is attributed mainly to the ANC, because I think many people are looking at that as that would be the support of ANC. And do you see, having had a strong relationship with them, I mean the ANC, do you see them coming back on the fold, especially now that Zuma seems to be taking a strong stand against his own former party?
Anything is possible. The English saying, never say never. And then we ask them, then why did you invent the word if it is not supposed to be used? They said never say never because you can't predict future.
Sure.
You can reorganize yourself and come back. So in the English have a saying that you should not say never because you don't know future, anything happen. In other words, I'm saying they can come back. Remember even this other young man came from ANC. What is his name?
Malema. Malema, yeah. Apparently, I can realize he's over time, I think because of the fundamental, the way he does his things, his party seems to be losing. Of course, he's also accusing President Zuma having eaten into his support, but coming with 9 and the MK coming with 15, you realize that his party is also losing.
So they all are ANC. Malema is ANC.
Yes,
Zuma is ANC. So anything is possible. I can't rule it out. So however grave, normally there should be contradictions. So there are major contradictions and minor contradictions. But whichever kind of contradictions that happen in a political organization or even a family, it depends on the methods of work you deploy to manage it. It is manageable. So if I wish them to, that they address that contradictions and manage it. And as I said, you can't say never because that I will never or they will never reconcile them. I mean, even in NRM, there was a time when people believed that one of our senior comrades, Ria Kategaya, had gone.
Sure.
But sooner or later, Kategaya was back in the fold. So major contradictions and minor contradictions do occur in a political organization. So the methods of work that you deploy to manage is what matters. If Zuma, for example, feels that the contradiction is so major that it is irreconcilable, then that is up to him. But I think for the greater interest of South Africa, for the superior interest of the majority and African continent at large, they should treat that as minor contradictions which are reconcilable.
Sure.
Remember that some of us are proud for ANC, even for international relations. You will realize that they are the ones who took recently a bold move to take the matter to court in ICJ. All of us were there, but who did it? It was ANC who said, okay, let us set a jurisprudence, set a precedent on this. The implementation of the court decision is another thing, but let us push it to another level. And they made their point. They pushed their case. They won on all the major grounds that they had made prayers to the court, and really we are proud about them. So, about reconciliation of these other splitter comrades, I just like to repeat, as I've said, that in a political organization, just like in a family, a wife and husband and children, there occur contradictions. Some contradictions are major and others are minor. But either way, depending on the methods of work, those contradictions can be resolved. And I pray that they resolve it.
Sure. I'm also thinking maybe the incoming leadership at the African Union could lead the way into putting ANC in order if it will be in their interest. And of course it will be in the interest of all the people, who, especially those of the Pan-African movement who are on this continent, because we look at countries like South Africa, of course, Nigeria, talking about Ghana and others, as the power points of this continent. And if anything happens, we all as Africans stand to lose, definitely.
The depth and the scope of the participation of AU, I'm not so sure, but we wish them well. You see AU with the instrument that gave birth to it, things like non-interference into the internal affairs of a country and all that. Then they have a contradiction of we want prosperity, peace in the member states. So they're neither here nor there. But I believe that it will take interest of other Pan-Africanists. For example, people like President Museveni, people like some leaders from Algeria and others, including others outside like Cuban leadership or even Russia. they may wish to emphasize and talk to our colleagues in South Africa that you better really resolve these contradictions, however minor or major it is. But if AU can do something without the being tied up with the instrument that it gives birth to AU, especially those principles of non-interference, and then you turn around and say you want prosperity or whatever in a member state, so you are neither here nor there. But we believe that they should do something, because South African is really our pride. They have a good infrastructure, they have a developed economy, they can stand and bring the rest of the Africans together. Now, if the people we are seeing as having that capacity to do it, they can't, then that is not so good. And as I said earlier, the young NRM, which liberated the older brother, the ANC, because NRM is about maybe not, because ANC came into birth around 19-something, very, very early. So they are a very senior political party in Africa, although by state power, NRM is much senior to them in state power. And that's why I said a younger brother helped liberate an older brother. But we did that because we thought that if they are standing up, then they would also be good for all of us. Exactly. So whoever has a stake in it, including those of President Museveni, and I know he's talking to them. As I told you, I took the party leaders to meet him in his state house. So we hope that ANC really does better than it is doing.
Many people in South Africa also look at the Democratic Alliance, which is now part of the government in this new alliance, as a white party.
Yeah, even it is, and some people even link it to the racist party by membership or by historical family ties. But what it is now, even if it is a white party, I think they will have to be democratic. For example, put it in a simple way. Those who advocated for apartheid regime, simply saying that the white should develop separately from the black. Yeah. That was basically the definition of apartheid. But still, some people put in the philosophy that not only should they develop differently, but one was superior to the other.
Exactly.
Which was wrong. Now, that system could not work even for the white South African. Why? As I told you, there was a total economic embargo on South Africa because of that. They were blocked with their economy. Now, if you ask a white South African now, do we go back to apartheid? They will be the first to refuse. Why? Because that would mean you deny MTN in the rest of Africa. That would mean you are denying Stanbic Bank in the rest of Africa. That would mean you are denying, what is this former Barclays? It is now called ABSA in Africa. That would mean you are denying all this trail of supermarkets in Africa. That would mean you are denying South African Airlines to fly to Africa. So the economic interest determines the political outlook. So no white South Africa now can advocate for apartheid. In fact, they think they had dead years. The years they had in apartheid were actually dead years. They say, oh my God, we regretted. I wish we didn't have this nonsense. Would have been, because they are now the ones dominating the African continent. Remember, all these South African companies are in Chad, in Nigeria, in everywhere in Africa. So no white South African would want that situation to roll back all this economic influence back to South Africa and close the border. So whether the Democratic Alliance, being a white party as it is, they are of circumstance forced to be democratic, and they are by circumstance forced to say that you can't go back to apartheid. Not at all. So I think the era has passed, and they have seen it, and they have learned it, and I don't think they're willing to roll back the clock of history. As I said, they even now think they had dead years burying their head in apartheid. Instead, they would have really got these resources in Africa long ago.
We, other than ANC, of course, we have had other political parties on this continent. We have seen what is happening in Ghana. You saw what happened with the KANU here, with the exception of Chama cha Mapinduzi that has actually hanged on the block for quite some time, but because maybe of the internal reforms. But most of the post-independence parties on the African continent seem to be having issues. Now, the problem mainly has been the leadership, but of course, specifically, like you have put it, for South Africa, with even the internal mechanisms of having changes every other time, we still have this. Do you think we need another revolution, like people have been talking on the African continent, to have a new leadership that will maybe be able to deliver the African continent in the next phase of democratic development?
Well, true that we have many parties in Africa are not stable. And I know this because I'm the Director External Affairs of my party.
Likely so.
And therefore, I have several forums where I meet other political parties. And you can see the instability where the parties are not visible. Because other parties, other stable parties around the world invite political parties depending on your stability. I know for a fact that there are known countries around the region where they fail to have which party to invite.
Sure.
And you will get a similar invitation for political parties in South Africa. You will not get them. You will get similar invitation in Rwanda for political parties. You won't get them. Just recently, I've been in India. By the way, I've been in Rwanda with the other political parties invited. I've been in South Africa, like I told you, with other political parties invited. And a few weeks back, I was in India because they were having elections. They had invited political parties.
Those who had issues like South Africa.
Yes. Now, you find that such the absence of a political actor from a party shows that the host inviting actually fails to look for who to invite in that country. Exactly. And they can't get who to invite. So, and you will only see the same faces. NRM, CCM being invited everywhere. Why? Because the host inviting looks around and sees those are the only stable parties around. And that is not a good thing, because this, some people form a political vehicle at any convenient time to access state power.
I've seen this happen in the neighborhood here in
Kenya. And then after all, the vehicle is disassembled. And
along the way.
After achieving the objective, the vehicle is disassembled. Now, many hosts inviting find it difficult to invite vehicles exactly. Which were assembled yesterday for purposes of political parties and all that. So it unfortunately cuts across Africa. So political parties are supposed to be the vanguard, the voices of the people, an organized vanguard which is stable over a period of time. And if we don't have that, then it does not augur well for the democracy, and it doesn't augur well for the leadership of Africa. As to whether we have, we need a liberating figure or liberating personalities to do that, unfortunately, with the sovereignty it is in each and every particular country. It's not possible to have at the moment a unifying person continentally. We hope that each and every specific country is looking at the challenges that they face. They will come up with an organized political party or political organization. Like in the case of Uganda, remember the law provides for political party or political organization. And in the case of NRM, we are political organization, because for us we still believe in a mass organization, in a all-encompassing. And since the constitutional dispensation decided that we registered it, and we registered it as an organization. Either way, so we do hope that the Africans in each and every specific country will have that organization, that political party that is stable and can carry the aspirations and the feelings of the people, so that they look more organized and stable. As I said, South Africa, we want to invite political parties. They look in some countries and they fail. They fail to get.
Sure.
And you will find such countries are absent in wherever invitation. I even take the chance to ask the guest, why haven't you invited people from this country? They tell you that we looked around, we failed to get a party to invite. We failed. So, and it is not good for our people.
Now, that of course comes in. African Union, for example, was built on a replica of the European Union. There is a lot in common with the structure of the African Union and the European Union. Of course, over time, the European Union has morphosized into other strong, put in strong structures, and with now the exit of Britain, they have been able to make a lot of adjustments so that they are fit for the future. Do you see Africa also having political parties that can cut across? We have Democratic Party in Uganda and the same Democratic Party in Kenya and in South Africa and in the rest of Africa, that will have to have a common position on some of these issues, because most of the European countries have these parties. They have values, common values. Do you see that happening in Africa?
It is possible, but I don't see it in the near future. But even at the global level, or Europe, for example, that you say, I happen to have lived in Europe for 8 years, so I know I pretty got exposed to their political system. I was a UN judge, human rights, for 8 years. So I served as a judge in Geneva for 8 years, so I know what their system is. But apart from the broad aspirations like Social Democrats, then the other parties like they call the Communist Party, where they really have not taken power, because the Communist Party are clear in their manifesto and aspirations for the workers. Their parties also are really not as broad as it is, but they have an institutional framework where they have a broad umbrella association of parties that ascribe to the same aspirations. But what leads to this differentiation? The differentiation is not just by will of man or by mere assumption of a supernatural feelings. The differentiation is a demand of the material conditions on the ground. And because of the fact that the material conditions differ, then you definitely have different political parties, because the political parties are a reflection of the materiality in a given society. Unless you're going to have things like the Workers' Party, because any worker anywhere is a worker, then unless you're going to have the Workers' Party or the Farmers' Party or whatever party that is that clear, but an average broad political parties is a reflection of a materiality, is a consciousness, is a dream reflecting from the material condition. And therefore, since material conditions differ, they will continue to be varied. They'll continue to be varied, save for that broad coalition of aspirations. And the minimum is like, we want a democratic system, okay? That is the minimum. That is what would broadly take them. Of course, there are others who would say, although time has passed, there are others who would say we want permanency. For example, if the Communist Party took over power for the workers, the Communist Party wouldn't say we want election, because it is for the workers.
For the workers.
So, but broadly in contemporary development is that people would subscribe to multi-party democracy, and therefore you will have a broad element of democracy in all of them.
Yeah, but also when you talk about the material differentiation, also maybe as Africans also need to look at the original benchmarks, because that these countries also exist, but we can't also run away from the fact that the colonial defragmentation of Africa still hangs on up to today. That having Africans think the same way may take some longer time. Maybe within the blocks, the East African, the West Africa, the Southern, and the North, like that, could come up with some political arrangement. But for then, when we used to have countries as countries, however small they were, I think that differentiation still then had to exist.
Yes, the differentiation is there, as I said. Maybe, and in a time to come, as we develop economically, we assume uniformity, because the economic development is independent of man's consciousness. As man interacts with science and nature, we tend to progress. Now, and that is also the basis for the European. You tend to see the uniformity in European parties because the economic situations has uniformly developed.
Somehow.
You will see the development in Europe, in UK, for example, is similar to the development in Germany, in France, and the rest. And that is why you will see a uniformity in political organization, a uniformity in political aspirations, and even a uniformity in methods of organization. So, similarly, like every society advances, Africa is moving towards that.
Yeah, because then that, of course, like you said, the political is determined by the economic.
Yeah, the materiality.
The materiality of the economic.
Yeah, even Europe is not by chance that their political parties tends to be uniform, because their materiality, their material organization of society is uniform.
Exactly.
If you went to a country like Germany and Switzerland, or even France, when you drive across the border, you really don't see a marked difference.
Exactly.
Apart from being told that the border stops here,
yeah.
the development is nearly the same. And that uniform development it leads to a reflection in the uniform political organization.
Yeah, and that's very key, because in Africa, when you drive, you can easily tell now you're crossing from one country into another.
You can tell. You can tell because there are marked differences.
Yes, our time is running out and we will be leaving the set shortly. But I wanted you to tell us something about what you think Africa should do so that we can remain united and that we can still address the issues, because in most cases we have been blaming the West this, West on this, and West on this, but is it necessary to always continue lamenting?
It's not good to continue lamenting, but it's good to diagnose our problems and look for a solution, because the world, especially the global West, is faced with the power of capital, the power of economic capital, the power of capitalism, or the power of imperialism. And it has no tendency of forgiveness. Capitalism of material will want to grab everything. In fact, they wouldn't even care if you cease to exist, as long as they. And therefore, the only way to get out of this is the Africans with their resources, where capital tends to dominate, to be organized and to say, you know what, we shall not have sympathy from our bigger brothers, in quotes and quotes. So we need to get a solution of our own. If you fell down and died, the capital will move ahead and say, sorry. It'll just say sorry to you who has died and move forward. And it's such a serious threat. Some people still believe in the capital tendency that we can as well take the whole continent. We can have our people be there. We can do without.
Now they have done that.
Yes, it did. I mean, slavery happened here. Even when there was Christianity. Remember that the slaves which were being crossed from Atlantic Ocean, they were even baptized.
Yes.
Now, if Jesus loves all of us, then why are you baptized, taking me as a slave? In the ocean, he said, you are now Peter, you are now John, and you cross. And Christianity was watching. Therefore, it's not yet Uhuru, because capitalism, with its thirst and quest for profit, has no limit. So we need to be organized so that when we talk to our friends, we talk to them from a position of strength. Otherwise, a lot of danger lies ahead.
Next time when we come back on this set, you will be talking about the issue of, because we have seen that even the democrats that we are engaging in as Africans seem to be so foreign that in most cases we don't even understand what we are doing. And so next time we come here, shall we be talking about that, say, does Africa maybe need its own system, given its background, historical background? How were we governing ourselves before this democracy comes in, where people have to be elected this, and but maybe we'll have also to look at
Sure,
that.
we shall talk about it. But I want to conclude by saying the question that you had asked before is a question President Museveni has labored to explain for a long time, the need for African to stand. And that's why he has been blaming the past chiefs who were here with this and while slaves were being taken. President Museveni has been trying to answer that question. And either we pay attention to it or we don't, we shall face it.
Definitely. We stand or we perish. Thank you so much. And watch for your time and the insight of the stories that we have been hearing about the ANC. And thank you so much, viewer, being with us up to this time. Apparently today we are going for 1 hour because the other programs are coming on. Next week we shall be back with more insights on discussions of African issues that concern us, the people of Africa, and how we can stand, because we don't do that, then we shall perish together. Thank you so much. Well, thank you. And we invite you to continue watching UBC because there are more interesting programs coming your way. Don't go away. Thank you.